Hello there, and welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I am joined by Ashley Smith from Destination World War II to discuss the film Red Tails. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Also, please be sure to check out our T Public store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody, and thrilled to start a brand new kind of mini season on the podcast with everybody here. And you may be aware, you may not be aware, but on September 2nd of 1945, that's the official formal conclusion to the end of the Second World War with the Japanese surrender aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, ending World War II, which kind of, to some would say, started in 1939. Some might say 1937. Some might even say even earlier. It's Most historians will probably say 1939, and most textbooks will say that. So, but formally, World War II will end on September 2nd, 80 years ago, roughly the time of the release of this episode here. And because of that, I wanted to commemorate this historic moment, this time and place where we can reflect on the history of the last 80 years and look particularly at some of the films that are a part of the Lucasfilm-adjacent galaxy here, that touches upon the Second World War, and have some great conversations over the next couple of weeks here talking about how the war impacted society, how the films of this modern age reflect the themes from that age, and what stories that we can take away from that, and for the next 80 years try to be better people, knowing the sacrifices that the greatest generation made. And we're starting off with a really good and interesting film this week, the which maybe you don't know of. It's 2012's Red Tails. It's actually produced by Lucasfilm, executive produced by George Lucas. The story and idea came from George Lucas himself. It was not a super big box office hit, but I was there opening night in 2012, and it's a film that I certainly enjoy many aspects of. And we've got a new guest on the show here this week to chat about it, Ashley Smith from a great blog, Destination World War II, Destination WWII, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Which great blog. She's also a World War II historian in her own right. She's a travel writer, tour guide, etc. So she comes in with a plethora of knowledge about the war and the background needed for a great conversation here. And she brings a wonderful perspective on the film, having watched for the first time herself. So I think you'll all enjoy this conversation, and I hope that you stick around for the next couple of weeks as we tackle some of the films that Lucasfilm has had a part in, such as Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, and we'll even tackle the new Apple TV series Masters of the Air, which ILM had a part in the visual effects for. So be on the lookout for all those over the next couple of weeks here, and really excited to dive into some of those topics with everybody here. Now, I will say this episode was recorded slightly earlier than when we typically would do this section. So maybe Cloud City Gossip is a little bit on the lower side in terms of news and announcements for this past week. However, because of that, I will say, like, the reason I'm recording it earlier is because I am, at the time of this release, at Destination D23. So make sure you're following us on all the social media platforms, just in case there's any Star Wars and Lucasfilm related announcements there. They're also having a live stream too that just got announced, so you can actually watch probably a majority of the presentations through that. But we will actually be boots on the ground, and if you're there, come say hello. We would love to interact and have a great time. And I'll be probably walking around in a Force Ghost Conversations t-shirt, so I'll be very easy to spot in that front there. But a big news announcement this week, and back to the day of recording this, Thursday. A big drop happened. That is the mark of the official start of production on Star Wars Starfighter. Yes, so the film that was officially announced in at Star Wars Celebration is actually started production today. I think it actually might even be technically a little ahead of schedule on that, because I think they said the fall, and this is really early fall. Even the school calendar, right, is some schools aren't even back in session yet. pre-Labor Day. So they really got ahead on things here, and I'm excited. And this film will, of course, be theatrically released on May 28th, 2027, and coinciding with the 50th anniversary thereabouts of Star Wars itself, which came out on May 25th, 1977. Now, we did get on confirmation of the full main cast of this film too in this press release here. So of course we knew about Ryan Gosling, who was there with Sean Levy, the director, at Star Wars Celebration to announce it. But we also got the names of some supporting cast members. So Flynn Gray, Matt Smith, who we were told in a Deadline article a few weeks ago. Mia Goth also, I think, noted in a previous headline article. Aaron Pierre, Simon Bird, Jamail Westman, Daniel Ings, and Amy Adams. One of my favorite actresses, Amy Adams, is in this, and I'm thrilled to bring her into the Star Wars galaxy too. And thrilled that this is actually up and running in production here. And I can't wait to see what this film actually produces. It'll be, of course, post Episode 9. And taking Star Wars into this next phase of what's beyond the Skywalker saga, what's not connected to the Mandoverse, what's all this new era that they can potentially dive into here, and I can't wait to see it. We also did get some news that the film was actually produced by Sean Levy and Kathleen Kennedy, of course, with executive producers then being Ryan Gosling, Dan Levine, Mary McLagan, Josh McLagan, and the script is written by Jonathan Tropper. Okay, so that is the big announcement. Production is now over in the UK, and can't wait for more details to come. And we'll, of course, be covering all of it here on Force Ghost Conversations as more information comes out, and probably set information and official press photos and whatnot, and then eventually trailers and all the cool stuff down the pipeline. And can't wait to finally get back into a Star Wars film discussion here. Will be frankly the first time we've talked about a new Star Wars film on the podcast, so that'll be really cool, and I can already think of innovative ways to bring that content to you all. All right, that is all the Cloud City gossip news that I had for this past week. Let's get into our main topic discussion, 2012's Red Tails about the Tuskegee Airmen with Ashley Smith. And stay tuned. Right after this break, we'll be back with that conversation. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another installment of Force Ghost Conversations. And I'm thrilled, frankly, to start a whole new kind of series for the next couple of weeks on the podcast. And, we are at the precipice of 80 years since the end of the Second World War. And officially, September 2nd is the date that the formal Japanese surrender took place on the USS Missouri in 1945. And to celebrate the end of the most traumatic and climactic event in human history recorded so far, I wanted to take this time to review some of the projects that are Lucasfilm adjacent or connected to the Lucasfilm family in some way, to discuss those films and talk about them and their place in time, and how they portray stories of the greatest generation of Americans. And of course, we have a guest here today to talk about the film Red Tails, which is the whole, kicking off the most connected one, perhaps, to the Lucasfilm family here. But we have a first-time guest on the show. Her name is Ashley Smith. She's a travel writer, a tour guide, and a World War II historian. And she actually has her own World War II travel site, blog, if you will, called Destination World War II. I am personally used it myself for some recent travel that I've done. We can get into that a little bit here. But Ashley, welcome to the podcast, and how are you doing?
Hi, good. Thank you so much for having me on. I can't wait to hear about where you've been recently.
So this is how I got in contact with you, through your blog, and it was very helpful for some recent travel I did this past summer. So a couple weeks ago, I went to Munich, and just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing out on any of the major World War II sites, or even some of the lesser known sites in the area. And your blog, I think, of like 20 must see, or perhaps under the radar World War II sites, was super helpful in creating a wonderful itinerary for both myself and my wife. So thank you for that.
You're
And
welcome.
I've already been
Munich is the place to be, though. Like, there's so much World War II history there. It's overwhelming almost.
Honestly, you really can't turn a corner without being like, oh, this is an apartment, or at least you look up a couple windows on a building, right? And you're like, oh, a certain someone might have lived there, and they,
Yeah.
or you're like, oh, here are the three the three former sites of a certain political party, uh, one being a museum now, and two others kind
Mhm.
of being buildings of some sorts. One particularly still having a certain symbol on the outside of the
Yep.
of the building. Ironically, also very close to one of the biggest thorns in his side at the LMU, now the Munich University, there with the incredible White Rose exhibit that they have there. Which, thanks for pointing out. I'm thrilled that that's there, and
Mhm.
I actually took the book that one of the Scholl siblings wrote afterwards, and read some of the leaflets as we were walking to the university exhibit there, which was again really fantastic. So anyone going to Munich, make sure you go check out all those cool sites, as well as just Munich's a great place in general. Marienplatz is a fun place to be any time of the day. The Victualian Mart is full of all
Mhm.
kinds of food items, and just Bavaria is as German as it can probably get. So you get a
Yep.
full realism of all things Germany. But yeah, thanks for that. And I'm already looking at the London one as we're looking
Oh,
potentially at
yeah.
a London trip next year.
Nice, yep. And now's a perfect time to plug Munich too, because Oktoberfest is just in a couple weeks.
That's right. If you're a partaker, that's a great time to go out and go enjoy the festival as it were out there. A little bit away. The grounds are a little bit away from the city center itself, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
But it's funny. Like my brother-in-law, when he never actually stepped foot in the city proper, he just kind of went to the
Oh,
airport,
yeah.
took a bus or the train or whatever to the site itself, and then I thought he was in Munich proper, but in reality, he's like
Right.
three kilometers or so outside of the city. So we're like, you got to go back. It was so cool, and definitely should be on everyone's bucket list, if not
Mhm.
just for that, but of course, Dachau is within day trips. It's literally a half-hour train ride away from the city center.
Mhm.
Neuschwanstein is, of course, a day trip as well. I think probably the most beautiful neo-romantic castle of the age. Um, and Salzburg, another great city, and Berchtesgaden too, are also day trips away from Munich. So tons to do, and only a 5-hour train ride from Berlin too, which was how we split our time in Germany. So we spent
Oh,
3 days in
nice.
Berlin, 3 days in Munich, and then that was our fun travel for the last this last summer here. So thank you
Nice.
again for your wonderful blog so far, and that's how we got connected to have this conversation here today. So folks, we are here to chat about Red Tails, which is actually Lucasfilm's foray into doing a World War II story, fully produced and funded, frankly, by George Lucas. So this is a passion project of his that he'd been working on since the late '80s. That finally got enough budget and the crew and actors to make it happen. And they 2012 Red Tails comes out, and unfortunately not a lot of people saw it at the time. So I hope that with it being on Disney Plus and other streaming platforms these days, that people are recognizing it more. And uh, but it's about the story of the Tuskegee Airmen. So let's start, Ashley, with that question here. If you can, provide our listeners with a quick sentence or two describing who were the Tuskegee Airmen in case they have no idea who or what they were.
Yeah, no problem. And I think a lot of people don't know who they are, which to me is crazy because I have been
Yeah,
very familiar with them. But I think a lot of people don't know. Like even when George Lucas first heard about it, he was like, "I've never heard this story before. This is
I
crazy."
can't believe that blew my mind. That was a sentence that was uttered. Like
I
he had
know.
no idea who they were. I'm like, you're of the generation that's born with World War II veterans as your parents.
Yeah, and I read an interview with Cuba Gooding Jr. too, because he did a Tuskegee Airmen movie before this one.
Yes,
And he also, when he got the script, he had no idea who they were.
my
Um,
goodness.
I know, but they were a unit of Black pilots and other supporting personnel in the U.S. Army Air Forces during World War II. The U.S. Army Air Forces being the precursor to the U.S. Air Force.
Mhm.
Uh, and their name comes from the location of their training facility, which was in Tuskegee, Alabama.
Right, right.
Yeah. There
And I
were,
bel
go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. Go ahead. Oh no, continue.
I was just going to say there were about 1,000 Black pilots who trained here
Hmm.
between 1941 and the end of the war. And they, the foundation of this group actually began as a quote experiment to see if
Mm.
Black men could cut it as aviators because they were obviously looked down upon in the very segregated military at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so it definitely wasn't for lack of trying that no Black man had ever been a pilot in the army or the military before. It was just the military was deeply segregated well until after World War II.
Yeah, it takes the 1947 uh, Military Realignment Act, I think, something to that degree, to officially
Yeah.
integrate the military
Yeah.
afterwards. And crazy to think that they had to prove themselves. Like this is the story of every war since frankly, of all American history, going to the American Revolution, is black soldiers have to prove themselves in every conflict in order to then fight. I think you probably are most people are familiar with the story of the 54th Massachusetts and the Civil War, and of course, and then, well, no, not of course, because people don't know this story apparently. But then Woodrow Wilson resegregated the military. I think, believe prior to World War I or the same time frame there, and then that's what leads us to this moment in time here, where again with the call to action once more, uh, and frankly the need for people to just to
Yeah.
be to be soldiers calls for them to put aside racism and all that stuff. Eventually, they'll fight through that, and then with more time and the need to rise and to prove themselves again, they get offered the opportunity to be more involved in various combat circumstances, situations, as we'll see in both in Red Tails and then actually in real life as well. 761st Tank Battalion also comes to mind as another all-black unit, and not just restricted to, of course, African Americans too, but Asian Americans also experience the same level of
Hmm.
segregation and being in certain units and all that stuff. So great overview. I'm glad, hope the listeners are now all caught up to speed here on who and what the Tuskegee Airmen are. I think I don't know exactly, so I'll ask you the question here. They at Tuskegee University, I believe there's some aspect of the National Park Service that owns and operates something in regards to the Tuskegee Airmen there. Is
Hmm.
that correct? Do they have a museum? What is the.
Yeah, it's the Tuskegee Airmen National Historic Park, I believe is the full name of it.
Okay, great.
Yeah, museum, they have planes there and all kinds of stuff.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
And of course, this group will then be nicknamed and dubbed the Red Tails for the infamous end of the the painting, I will say, on the end of their P-51s that they will eventually get. The incredible P-51 D Mustang plane. That is a true sight to believe if anyone ever gets a chance to see it live and in action. So,
I
and
have seen it in action and it is crazy. I'm a big aviation nerd. So
oh
seeing
man,
these like that, like especially the P-51 in action is just like so crazy.
oh, so cool! It is so
Yeah.
cool. Have you ever been to World War II weekend in Reading, Pennsylvania?
I have. Have you?
Many times. Yes, there used to
Really?
be.
Wow.
Absolutely. I'm from Pennsylvania, so Hershey,
Okay.
Pennsylvania originally, and for many years I had from about 2005 through about 2013, I had a 3-day pass for all those
Mhm.
years, and a big joy and highlight is always hearing the P-51 flying over,
Yes, that's where I
and
saw him. It was so
being like,
awesome.
oh, look at them doing these barrel rolls and all that stuff,
I
and
know.
it is such a master of aviation, and that frankly the Tuskegee Airmen will eventually get them. They're of course led with some hand me down planes, the P-50 and P-40 and the P-39s, prior to eventually getting the lift up to the Mac Daddy, if you will, of World War II aviation. But about Red Tail specifically, so this film came out in 2012, just after the Star Wars prequel trilogy had concluded in 2005. The fourth installment in the Indiana Jones saga, I guess, if you will, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, had come out in 2008, and then this was their next project that they took on after that. And it remains one of the few films that Lucasfilm has produced, which again was either not a Star Wars or an Indiana Jones production. Like we talked about a little bit earlier here, the impetus for making this film came from George himself. And why do you think he was so passionate about bringing the story to the big screen? And do you think that Lucasfilm was perhaps the right production company to take on this monumental task of bringing this almost mythic like force to the big screen?
Okay, so when I read this question before I had seen the movie, I was like, I have no idea why he would want to do a random project like this. But then as soon as I saw the movie, I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense now. It really
Yeah.
has all the things that a George Lucas movie has.
Sure.
It has like air battles, big machines, it has undeniable villains. It
Hmm.
has a
Yeah,
group
that's for
of
sure.
underdogs, It's a group of underdogs doing what the powerful majority says they can't do and
Hmm.
proving them wrong. So I feel like it has all the characteristics of what a Lucasfilm is. So I feel like when he initially heard the story of the Tuskegee Airmen, I don't know what his motivation was, obviously, but I feel like as he heard the story, he probably saw it in his mind as
Hmm.
well,
Hmm. Yeah.
and thought that would make a good movie. Because I'll tell you, I visit a lot of World War II museums, a lot. And I will come across a story every now and then that I'm like, this should be a movie. Why isn't this a movie?
True.
There are just so many instances like that, especially from World War II. So I think as soon as he heard about it, he thought, airplanes, air battles, this would be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think that it's interesting to me again when we talked that like he had never heard of them before until the late 80s, especially being a student of World War II himself. Like stormtroopers aren't called stormtroopers in Star
Hmm.
Wars for no reason, right? The evil empire is not inspired by it's inspired by the Third Reich and Nazi Germany and very much all those principles. And the prequel trilogy is about how, in many ways, an allegory for Germany giving up its power to a fanatical dictator. So he's definitely aware of the story. And interestingly, I will say, in their first cut of Star Wars, when he's the infamous showing of the rough cut of whatever footage he had together for friends Steven Spielberg and Brian De Palma and Martin Scorsese in like 1976. Half of the footage of the movie was intercut with dogfighting reels that he
Yeah.
found and was
Nice.
like, "This is how it should look in theory, guys. When all the visual effects are done, this is how it'll be." So this is a guy that is aware and loves the faster and intense style of dogfighting and that type of
Hmm.
nature, and that's very prevalent in Star Wars, right? The Death Star trench sequence is not a lightsaber duel; it's literally X-wings fighting in the sky and being like this ragtag group of people fighting with their P-40s and P-47s and P-38s and doing these incredible dogfighting sequences above this tyrannical Death Star sequence here. So it's a little crazy to again think that this guy had no idea who they were.
Right.
So I think that's definitely the case. Look, Lucasfilm is known for incredible visual effects, and they brought their A game with this one. The budget for this movie was only $50 million, with some of that being the distribution. So it's really like I would say 25 million in reality to make and produce this film. And look, they're not actually flying P-51s and ME
Hmm.
262s in this film, folks. This is actually like CG created things, and honestly, it looks better than a lot of the stuff that is produced in some of the World War II movies that I'm seeing in the last couple of years. Like the visual effects are that good, and I will say too, Skywalker sound really did a number in this movie with the sound effects in this film. Like we talked about how incredible it is to hear a P-51 in person, and boy,
Hmm.
do you get that feeling when you've got a great surround sound system and it hooked up to whatever television platform that you've got going on, or if you have the Blu-ray like I do, it comes across those speakers really well. So I think from all those aspects of the production side of things, yeah, Lucasfilm is the right company to do this. But I did see another quote here in just like the making of it, right? And why it took 30 years, well, not 30 years, 20 plus years to get this film up and running, is the fact that Hollywood wasn't willing to take on a full production with an all black cast. So it shows the racism that is intermittent within the institution of Hollywood itself. And George Lucas is like, well, fine, I will pay for it, much like he paid for all of Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back and all that stuff to like have full ownership of those properties, but that for a different reason. And this is him saying like, this is a great story. This needs to be told. I will take on the effort for this no matter what the cost is and make it happen. So in a way, he's the only person to make this happen if
Right.
he's willing to self-fund it himself and then say, great, find a great cast of people and make it so. And this is the film is the output that we get at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So you noted that this instance was your first time even hearing about this movie. When I reached out to say, "Hey, you want to come on the show and talk about the film
Yeah.
Red Tails?" So you heard about it for the first time, and then you watched it. So I'm curious, Ashley, as a student of the Second World War, I'm sure you've seen many a World War II film and television show and documentary over the years. What were your initial reactions? Did you love it, hate it, indifferent, neutral? What were your thoughts?
Well, just from the opening scene of the movie, I knew it wasn't going to be for me. You're right. I do watch a crazy number of World War II movies. It's pretty much the only kind of movie that I really enjoy, I guess.
Okay,
Um,
yeah.
but the cheesy dialogue was
Okay.
a total deal breaker for me.
Got it. Got it.
But like you said, the special effects, and the air battles and the cast, everything was great. But the dialogue, I I don't know. It's always a deal breaker for me.
The dialogue almost immediately,
Yes.
like them talking back
Immediately.
and forth to themselves in the headsets. You're
Yes.
like, oh man, this is something. This is.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Do you think that? So this film comes out in 2012, so it's obviously filmed like 2010, 2011, etc., to then come out at such a release date. So, and it's made by a man who's of the generation that then watched those cheesy World War II films that came out in the immediate aftermath of it. So we're talking like
Yeah.
Battlegrounds, Sands of Iwo Jima, Flying Tigers, right? That
Mhm.
type of World War II film. Is this George Lucas with modern technology then creating a film in his head was like from 1950, a 1950 B World War II movie, if you will?
Okay, look, I had not even thought of it that way, but this exact moment when you just mentioned that, I was like, that actually makes a lot of sense because I have watched some of those John Wayne World War II movies that came
Oh,
out
there are many of them.
either
Back to Baton,
yes. Yeah,
right?
like during the war they came out or immediately after and, I'm not a fan of John Wayne. Um, but yes, that's exactly how this dialogue feels. It feels like it's, when you watch a movie from the 40s, you're like, there's no way people talk like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's weird to see people talk like that now, but maybe that was the intention he had. My mind is blown. I feel like I completely missed that.
You're like, maybe it wasn't even intentional, right? Maybe I'm just giving
Right.
him the benefit of the
Right.
doubt for
Maybe you
something
are.
like this here, but I'm like, well, it comes out in this day and age, but it's all like it's this guy that is very much a fan of like the B movie kind of thing, right? Indiana Jones is a very much a 1930s Republic serial action hero, just made in the 1980s, right? And
Hmm.
taking that to that next level here. So I think there could be theoretically, based off of that connection, this possibility that it was trying to do that just with modern technology and the sound and CG regarding with all that, and also Hollywood's, or maybe not Hollywood's willingness, but the fervor of many to actually make this film at the right time that it is. It could be possible, but that is a complaint that I did see across the board when it came to the writing. It was probably a little clunky, very much of um, tongue in cheek of the period, perhaps is a
Hmm.
way to describe it. Very much not like the dialogue of Saving Private Ryan or Flags of Our Fathers, other
Hmm.
types of comparable World War II films from that era. It's more of cheesy and all that kind of nature. But perhaps does the PG-13 rating maybe hurt it in that aspect too, right? Is the audience that it's more to be family friendly also impact the writing that took place for this film too?
That's hard to say. It's it would be really hard for someone to make a family-friendly World War II movie because it's
It's
just
almost oxymoronic just to even
it
say it, right?
is, I'm trying really hard to think of some that I would consider family-friendly, and if they are family-friendly, then they're not doing the actual story any justice, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. War
Um,
is not family friendly.
right. Yeah, but there's a thing with movies like this, like, I would say this movie falls into a category like Pearl Harbor, what was it, 2001?
Oh yes. Yep.
Um, yeah, like the 2019 Midway that came out.
Oh yeah, another
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. So these are they're clearly trying to tell these stories to a general audience.
Hmm.
Um, like I'm not really the target market. I prefer something more like Saving Private Ryan, something that's a little more
Sure.
realistic and extremely not family friendly. Um, so even though like I don't really like the dialogue in this movie, and maybe it's not for me,
Hmm.
um, but there is an audience for that, and it's really it really matters because it's like for a general audience. So not World War II historians, not really history buffs, um, and to bring in a general audience like that, you need it to be just diluted, I guess you could say.
Perhaps.
Maybe,
Yeah.
um, yeah, because it's harder to get a general audience who's not World War II nerds to see a movie like that. So you need the star-studded cast and the CGI and
Hmm.
the simple, easy to follow plot line and the relatable dialogue, I guess. It's easy to understand. So I feel like it does have its place because it gets people like that interested in World War II
Hmm.
stories. Um,
Yeah. Is it a gateway perhaps
there you
to
go.
get people in the door and then say,
Right.
okay, I was interested in this. Now I'm going to go on YouTube and look up Tuskegee Airmen and see the plethora of
Hmm.
documentaries that are produced across the board from various different agencies. Um, and frankly, it opens the door for other people to maybe tell other Tuskegee Airmen stories too, and because this is just focused on one fictional unit too,
Hmm.
and there were many units of the Tuskegee Airmen, not just one group of like 6 or 7 guys that went up in planes every so often.
Right. And if you told like I understand that history isn't for everyone. Most people think it's quite boring.
What are
So
you
if you
talking
were
about,
like,
Ashley? What?
I know, I know. I honestly can't understand because to
I
me
don't
it's
either.
the most fascinating thing in the world.
It's a real
Um,
story.
I know, exactly. So but if you tell someone, let's go to the movies and watch this documentary about this Air Force unit in World War II, they'd be like, snooze fest. But, if you say, oh, this new movie came out, George Lucas and,
Hmm.
all these huge stars and action and people like, okay. And then they learned about the Tuskegee Airmen.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
feel like cheesy or not, movies like this do have their place. It might not be the Oscars, but they do
that's
have
true.
a place.
And I will say it is never disrespectful of the story, right? I feel like everything done within this movie is done in a way to honor and cherish the story of those guys versus a film like maybe like Pearl Harbor. And I'll go at it. I
Hmm.
find it very disrespectful at many times with the way that it presents itself, and actually the historical inaccuracies of certain ships being sinking in different directions than they actually did for the sake of the
Yeah.
effect.
Right.
But this film tries to be more, I guess, more diligent in the way that it approaches the story in a way that other films of this genre have not. So
Hmm.
it's
And
interesting.
look,
Yeah. Oh,
all that
sorry.
said, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't sobbing during Lightning's death scene. Am I
See?
allowed am I allowed spoiler alerts?
Oh yes, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Feel free to anything within this movie is
right.
totally fair game. Yep.
I mean, cheesy or not, I'm still crying. I'm like, it still works. The story, it still works.
It
So,
was good. It was a
yeah.
good story, and that trope of, oh, he has um the loved one. He just got engaged,
I
right? She said
know.
he loved him, and all that romanticism. Again, probably a trope of those 1950s World War
Right.
II films, right?
I
I
know.
am I'm seeing flying tigers right in the back of my eyelids here. That
Yeah.
I've seen a very similar scene to that.
And I
So yeah,
usually
it
hate when
does.
they put these love stories into these movies just
I know.
to
Sometimes they
have a
just
love
shoehorn it
story.
in there.
I
Yep, yep.
know, but whatever, it still
Cover
got to
cover
me.
cover all quadrants of the fan base, perhaps.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and yeah, but yes, it does do a good job of building this unit over time. And again, the dynamic between Lightning and the captain, Easy. The yin and yang of them, so to speak, was a
Hmm.
really interesting push pull. Um, you know, Neo's in this movie. you know,
Yeah. Who isn't in this movie?
who is it? Yeah, exactly. If you're an African American actor in the early 2010s, you're in this movie somehow.
Yeah.
But before we dive into the acting and the actors of this, let's talk about a little bit of the story itself here. So it is the story Red Tails is about the Tuskegee Airmen, but it revolves around this fictional group of fighter pilots, a part of the 332nd Fighter Group, as they are in Italy in 1944. Now, I do say that this was a fictional group, and we can talk about that was done for a specific reason here. Um, but as an aside, and as a historian, do you wish that they instead had adapted the stories of real people from the war instead?
Yes and no. I
Okay.
think there are pros and cons to both. I do like when filmmakers use real people as their
Mm-hmm.
focus because it just helps with the whole historical accuracy of all of
Got it.
it, And I always, while I'm watching a movie, I'll do a deep dive into this person's biography, see, because it's so interesting to me.
Yeah.
Um, so, but when filmmakers use fictional characters like the ones in Red Tails, even if they are based on real, ideas of people, it still makes the movie feel like more made up, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a true story, so we need to drill that into people's minds that this is actually true
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
But then when they're like, these people aren't real, that kind of brings questions. Um, but at the same time, using real people as inspiration is also very hard, especially in World War II
Mm-hmm.
movies.
Mm-hmm.
We'll never understand what these people went through. It's nearly impossible to do
Good point.
their experiences justice. And I feel like there's so much room for error.
Right.
Um, but for a movie like this, that's not entirely serious, I guess,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I feel like if they were to use real people, it would, I don't know, it feels like a caricature of these people, you know?
Yeah, 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 right. I feel
So,
like that's a good point. For the tone of this film, it
yeah,
would seem off to
yeah.
portray them in the way that they do in this movie.
Yes. So normally, yes, I like when they base them on real people, but for this movie especially and others like it, I'm kind of glad they didn't base it on real people.
I agree. Ultimately, I think that's fair. It's all fair, valid points to make for that case. Um, and I would generally say too, yeah, there's real people that made real historic and heroic moments, and they should be told and remembered. And a film is a great way to get that to a massive audience without having to say, yeah, sit down and watch this 14-hour documentary that Ken Burns
Hmm.
produced, and you'll get a few stories here and there about the Tuskegee Airmen and their contributions to the war effort. Um, but I will say there is a flexibility, perhaps, in you know telling these stories without having a specific person in mind. It from my understand, they interviewed maybe as many people as they could that were connected to the Tuskegee Airmen. They brought them out to Skywalker Ranch, did full interviews with them, and then compiled their stories into like an algorithm, not an algorithm as we would today think of, but an author took the writer, the screenplay writer for this movie, took their stories and then distilled them into various themes that were consistent across them, and experiences and action moments that they faced, and then compiled that into one grand movie of, okay, here are the quote unquote, here are the adventures of the Tuskegee Airmen, if you will, almost like a World War II newsreel. um, and I think there's a flexibility with that, and I think that ultimately they don't have to get estates involved, right, with like, oh, you portrayed my dad this way. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how I'm thrilled about that, and I'm sure there's some cost with that too if you're trying to keep costs down about not having to pay for people's likeness and their stories and whatnot, or it's not necessarily adaptations of a specific book itself. So
Hmm.
you don't need to pay for the rights to that to then portray it on screen. So I think there's the flexibility aspect of that is pretty darn good as well. But there is a part of me that's like, oh, there's another. So as we said, this is a great perhaps gateway film that maybe
Hmm.
some story will be told years from down the line that actually adapts some of the actual pilots that fought in their specific story, because I'm sure there's a lot of great stories to be told and they haven't been because of institutionalized racism and putting people's stories in the back burner, and all that. So hopefully those stories come to light now. I'm sure well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm sure I'm gonna assume here as a World War II historian that you have seen Masters of the Air on Apple
Hmm.
TV, which does for one episode and a half try and tell some of the Tuskegee Airmen stories with actual real people.
Hmm.
So that is a recent story that's come out in the media space that has tried to tackle some of the story. Now, I would argue maybe it was a little bit shoehorned in there, perhaps,
Hmm.
maybe not done to the best that I would like to see it in such a manner. But it is hopefully that and this leads to more down the line. Is ultimately what I'm getting at there. But um, yeah, I'm of the same vein here. I could see it going both ways, but ultimately, with the tone and the direction they did for this film, I think it is wise that they chose fictional people so that they could give us that grand lightning death sequence at the end of this, where
I know.
he goes out like a hero defending his buddy.
He does. I know.
So let's get to the cast of this film, which we you kind of not you really can't talk about this film without like being first like, oh, they're in it, they're in it, they're in it. Holy cow! Especially 13 years later, where a lot of these guys have gone on to have even bigger careers than they even
Hmm.
probably intended at the start of this production of this movie. So it is really star-studded. Um, what did you think of the performances in the film overall, and was there a particular actor's performance and or scene that you felt was particularly well done once you got past the dialogue?
Yes, the dialogue. And I feel like the it was acted just to go along with the dialogue, you know?
Mm-hmm. Very
So
much a George Lucas production, right? He's never been a
yes.
guy that's like, I love dialogue.
Yeah, obviously. No, I really liked David Oyelowo. I say his
Yes.
name wrong
Yeah,
every
I think you
time.
did. I think you got it right
Um,
this time.
he is amazing in everything he does. I just love him so much. Obviously, he was, I guess, the main character of the movie, but I feel like he earned that because he's so good.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
Terrence Howard is always fantastic, even if he does play the same character in every movie. You know, like I don't know about his range, but he's really, really good. Yeah, so he's always good. Cuba Gooding Jr. felt weird.
Yeah, okay. Did you
I
feel a little out of place? Like
usually,
maybe that's the Terrence Howard role he should have been.
I, I don't know. It was he was only like 44 years old, I think, when that
Mm-hmm.
movie came out. But I think he was supposed to be playing someone much older, right?
Perhaps. I mean, made up character, so we're
I
rolling with
know. I
it.
gotta see if I can figure that out. Because like he moved slow and he talked like he was trying to sound
Definitely
like an
grizzled
old
and it's
man.
been
Yeah,
world weary.
right. So I think maybe he was supposed to be playing an older character. So instead of casting an older character, they casted him because he's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that felt a little weird, but I liked Lightning the best, definitely.
Lighting was great.
Yes.
Lighting was great. Yeah, David Oyelowo.
See?
um, I know it's always unfortunately it's a tongue twister every time, and I hate to say it though because his name. He's a great actor. He's
Hmm.
very much in the Lucasfilm family. He's a voice actor on Star Wars Rebels for a character named Agent Callus, which is a fan favorite across the board. Of course, his role as Martin Luther King Jr. that he'll do later in
Hmm.
Selma is fantastic, fantastic. Neo randomly in this movie, or perhaps not
Yeah.
randomly in this movie. I mean, comes out probably at the height of his time in 2012. So
Yeah,
it's
you're
a great
right.
pull to get Neo in this. A very young Michael B. Jordan in this. This might
Hmm.
be honestly his first, aside from The Wire, acting production before he gets really connected with like Ryan Coogler and stuff, and will go on to massive success, and especially this past year with the film Sinners. He's fantastic in this. Method Man somehow's in this movie
Hmm.
too. Another rap icon of the early 2000s and of Hamilton fame, right? Leslie Odom Jr.
Hmm.
is in this.
He's always good too.
Very good. He does a nice little like um, antithesis to the perhaps heroic nature of Lightning in this film, right? He's always that
Hmm.
like that counter voice to things that I think is perhaps of the era, right? Of this like good
Right.
and evil, very much
Hmm.
production that that is Red Tails. And I did also like Nate Parker as Captain Easy, right? I feel like that was a the juxtaposition of his alcoholism and kind of the weight of having to do like all these guys that are underneath him, and they're going up in these
Mhm.
dangerous situations now, and he has to lead this team. I felt like that was a really well done character arc over the course of things, and then with Lightning sacrificing it, that ultimately makes him say like, okay, can I can choose to be better after this, right? That push over the edge that in honor of his friend
Mhm. He
that he
poured
bunked
his
with.
liquor down the drain. It
He
was
poured it
beautiful.
out. I don't know if it was even down the drain. It was kind of like
Oh, was it just
on the
looked like a
floor
drain?
of his
Oh, okay.
and that was my immediate thought was, man, that place is gonna stink for quite some time.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably already does because it's a barracks, right?
Right.
But it probably hasn't smelled great in quite many moons. But a lot of great I mean, Bryan Cranston too in
Bryan
this.
Cranston was in it.
Just
Yeah, I love
randomly
him.
in this, like, even prior to Breaking Bad, so he hadn't even had his big moment yet in the sun. He was still just the dad from Malcolm in the Middle. Um, and yeah, a lot of great moments in this. I did like a lot of like there was that sequence with Lightning where he sees the German destroyer and he's like, I'm going back. And then they
Mhm.
watch the video of it later, like, because apparently every plane has um, a camera where they're collecting
Yeah.
footage and they can watch it almost instantaneously after
Right.
getting back.
Yeah.
Was a neat, probably historically very inaccurate moment, but I did enjoy seeing some of those, like, oh, we can watch our highlight reel very quickly here, especially with the train sequence and the destroyer sequence, as his buddy, I can't remember who exactly was that he was escorting back, was bleeding out. And
Mhm.
he's like, oh, I
Yeah.
can get this destroyer too while you're barely clinging on to life here,
Right.
and all that. But yeah, I thought it was good, and then ultimately set up the hot-headedness, if you will, that Lightning is going to do later in this to save his buddy Easy. And
Yeah,
yeah,
and I really wanna look into that whole video recording thing because
yeah.
they did that several times in that movie,
Very
and
prevalent.
I'm watching it like I have never heard of this before.
It has not come
Um,
up once in any of the books I've read.
no, no, I've read a lot of books and I've watched a lot of
You're like, have I been
footage
stumped?
and
Did I
movies,
find the
and
one thing?
I know, and I have a master's degree in World War II studies, and I took a course on the European Air War.
Oh,
We
sorry.
never learned about watching your highlight reels after the battle, but so I don't know if that's just completely just fabricated out of thin air,
It'd be
or
crazy
if
if it's.
I just have not picked up on that detail before.
I mean, it honestly, it'd be the best. Like, it's not obviously it's the worst. It's the best kept secret, but like,
Right.
what a treasure trove of footage from the Second World War that
I
would exist
know.
if all of these planes on every mission had some sort of camera recording all these different activities, right? Because I feel like
Yeah, like
uh,
different
when you've
angles
watched
and
when you've watched all the hundreds of hours of documentaries of this subject over the years, you kind of start recognizing the same clips.
mhm, yeah, exactly.
I'm sure
I
you're like,
don't think
okay,
there's that many,
you're
so
like, yep, there's this Tarawa sequence. Oh, they colorized this one, but I know what it is. Um,
yeah,
right, right. I'm sure you can already. You're just having this running reel in your head of like all the same images that you see over and over again. Uh,
yeah.
and yeah, what an interesting, because they always have these documentaries come out every so often. We're like, with brand new footage, never before
Mhm,
seen. And like, well, where did you find this from? Did you find it from like some deep dark cellar in Munich that had been
right.
survived the war
Yeah.
somehow?
But it's never
Uh,
dash cam footage from an airplane,
right, yeah.
so
Give me more dash
right.
cam footage. Let's see all
And then
the
they land and they're like, "Let's watch let's play that back."
yeah, we can
And they're
quickly
watching
develop
it.
this and watch it
Yeah.
hours later.
No, I don't know. I mean, it's like a football team, you know? Like,
Let's
let's
yeah,
watch our
watch our
game
tape.
and see
Yep.
what we can do better next time. I don't know if that was a real thing that happened, but I'm going to look into that and get back to you.
There's I gotta think there's gotta be some condensed timeline here, because I doubt the footage is ready to go that quickly. My brain is
I
just
would
immediately
imagine
going
it's
to like
not.
Joe Rosenthal's photograph of the flag raising, where
Yeah.
had to sit for hours in a dark room to develop that
Right.
footage there, right? So I'm like, okay, this is an actual film reel. There's no way. There's no way. But
No.
maybe a great way to investigate further that
I
could lead
know.
to perhaps more fruitful discoveries later on.
I feel like there's no way that that happened, but there's a little part of me that's like,
But
did
you
he
want to
get that
believe?
from somewhere? I
Yeah.
don't I don't know. I'm still in disbelief, but I will look into that.
Now, the only thing that I could think of that would make them, like, because they're very much so using in the overall plot of the story of like, oh, this is this is a test, right? The Tuskegee experiment, right? Is,
Mhm.
what they're calling it back home in those board meetings that they're having. So maybe they're like using it as like daily footage to say like, okay, this is what they're doing for this unit, right? Perhaps maybe it's not a
Right.
grand across the board, and maybe it's just Lightning and Easy that have it, because I don't remember anybody else having it on their planes. But
Right.
I,
I'll
I,
I'll
I am
look at
hopeful
that.
too. I am hopeful too that a lot more planes had just quick footage of their
I
daily
know.
endeavors. Oh, what a treasure trove of great footage that would be.
I know. I'll
Especially over in
find
the
that out.
Pacific too, where more
Yeah.
dogfights and all that stuff over the course of the war there. Interesting. Um, so as an all black unit, the Tuskegee Airmen faced a war on two fronts, so to speak. The actual war itself against the Germans, as well as the racism felt at home and abroad. The film does a little bit of portraying of both there. So, how well do you think the film highlighted the concept of the quote unquote double victory campaign? This victory, both in terms of the war itself and trying to combat the racism as well.
I thought it failed miserably.
Tell me more.
Um, but again, this is not a super serious film, so I see what they're trying to do.
Hmm.
Um, there were the racist comments sprinkled throughout, a few scenes here
Yeah.
and there, just to kind of let everybody know that they are looked down upon,
Hmm.
not respected, all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, but then I'd say like the last third of the movie just erased all of that. Just
Hmm.
literally everything was fine after that. Like as soon as
Racism
the
is over, guys.
racism is over, the white pilots started noticing how capable the black airmen were, and then it was like all of a sudden America's racism just disintegrated into
Yep.
thin air.
Come on over to
Um,
the officers club. You're all
Come to the
welcome now.
officers club, drinks for everyone. Oh my god! And when he said, when that one guy was like, we say colored, but that's not what you prefer. And I was
That
like,
was an interesting
not a
sequence.
chance. Not a chance. Is this the conversation they're having right now? Um, yeah. But even the even the racist comments that were made were so corny that I feel like people were
Very
probably
tame
like, no
racism in a
one
way.
talk like
Yeah.
that,
It would have been
like
very
there was
much more darker than what
oh
was
yeah.
presented.
Yeah. There was one scene where it was towards the end, I guess, where the white pilots were flying and they were like, looking through their binoculars and they're like, oh no, our escort's a black man. Well, we're gonna have to do this ourselves, or we're not gonna get any help today. And I was like, oh my God. You know, People are probably thinking that's so cheesy. There's no way that they talk like that. Even though it was much, much worse. Um,
Right.
yeah, but not only was the dialogue cringe in respect to that. I feel like it also just erased all the struggles these men continue to face in the military, which was still
Mm-hmm.
segregated,
Mm-hmm.
and especially back home.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
there was at one time the idea that if black men served their country in the military, that just maybe when they got home, they maybe have earned their country's respect.
Mm-hmm.
We could talk about some rights here, um, pave the way for a serious change. But and these expectations of what life would be like after they served their country in the war are largely believed to be the origins of the modern civil rights movement.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
when they returned home, when their wartime contributions were largely dismissed, they continue to face discrimination, police brutality, oppression, etc. The U.S. that they returned to was the same. They were still
Mm-hmm.
segregated.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't even benefit from the GI Bill because
Yep. Yep.
universities weren't even accepting black students.
And it was
So
up to the up to the states to disperse it.
right,
And if you lived
yeah,
in an Alabama, a Mississippi,
hmm
right, good luck getting that.
yeah, I know. So I feel like the movie where racism just ended because look how great these black pilots are, like really did a disservice to these real life people, who
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, not only were they not treated like that in the military, I mean, it was like they got home and it didn't get any better and it got
Right.
exponentially worse.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that this is perhaps the hubris of a white man, perhaps, to take on this story and to be involved in the writing and the shooting of it. And I know Anthony Richardson is the director of this, who is African American, but very much George Lucas is behind all of this, and he even, in fact, ghost directed like the whole third act when they needed to do reshoots for this, and the director couldn't come back to do so. So, do you think that perhaps unintentionally or through the unintentionality of it, perhaps that is through the lens of a white older male projecting onto the story again, very much like we surmise the tonality of the story and all that stuff is almost like, oh, we still have to talk about the racism of it all. Checkbox. We're in 2012 now. Racism is over, even though it's not.
Right. Um, yeah, I mean, but I don't want to just chalk it up to that because he had help. You know,
Sure.
he
Yep.
wasn't like
Exactly.
a
It
one-man
wasn't a one-man show.
filmmaker. Right. There were plenty of people along the way that could have been like, maybe we shouldn't just like make racism disappear,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
maybe put them in some more historically accurate, aka worse situations. Um,
Yeah.
or maybe just talk about it a little more. And I feel like, maybe they just didn't want to focus on that and they wanted to just focus on the air battles, and the actual war stuff. But I feel like that was such a huge, huge part of the Tuskegee Airmen history that
It
it
literally is
needed to
half of the
be
story.
in there more, yes, and in more of like a serious fashion. But it's PG-13 and it's a movie for a general audience, so I feel like
General audience. Yep.
you're limited.
And
I
it's only
don't
2
know.
hours. And so
Yeah,
like
it's not
it's
long.
hard to pack all that into a cohesive story that tries to tell a narrative that has a cherry on top ending, if you will, right?
Hmm.
Not a lot
Right.
of these World War II movies really have that as an option, especially when they're talking about a very specific time and place in
Hmm.
the war, which this tries to do, right? It's like, oh, now we're bombing Berlin. War's over,
Right.
guys. We bombed Berlin. Good job. Presidential unit citation.
Hmm.
All is forgiven.
Yeah.
Um, it is tough. I'm not saying it's interesting the approach that they did with this, right? Because there is a different path where they focus more on that, and it's more of a maybe not gritty, but it's certainly a drama focusing on the hardships of the men and having to face all that. And I feel like even Masters of the Air doesn't even do that well enough, and that had the benefit of 13 years of hindsight afterwards,
Hmm.
and
Right.
post COVID and George Floyd situations where these are more talked about things than perhaps they were in 2012, and or at least more in the common zeitgeist to talk about this kinds of discussions and issues. Um, so um, I do wish that they had gone further into that, and but again, maybe it's the hindrances of 2 hours. We have to get a lot of fighting and action in here and tell a story, and well, I guess we do have to talk about racism a little bit. Here's a checkbox that we got to show some instances where they experienced this, but like you said, in reality, it would have been a lot darker and sinister
Hmm.
and horrific. And I do agree with you that this is the formation of the civil rights movement, and then you can even trace that line to, Jackie Robinson is a very popular figure in American history who served in the Second World War and will literally be court-martialed for standing up for his rights in 1945, and is kicked out of the army for that, and then goes on to integrate baseball and will be very much an inspiration for integration in many other aspects of American society. So there are tons of stories about that I think can still be mined for um, future iterations and tellings of these tales in the years to come. And I hope that, especially as we lose more and more of these veterans every day, that hopefully they're recorded in some way, shape, or form that can be reviewed at some point. That someone will say, "Oh, I want to tell um, a 10 episode TV series talking about one different pilot and their experiences every day,
Hmm.
or in an episode, right?" Um, that could be a great case for that. So very much a gateway movie
Right.
in many ways, and it is sad that it kind of misses the mark a little bit when it comes to the racism of it all.
But you made another good point. Masters of the Air, that's Spielberg.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
another white man trying to tell
Yep.
the black man's tale, I guess. And then
Yep.
I'm like, okay, maybe that's not it. But then have you seen Miracle at St. Anna?
I have, yes, the Spike Lee joint.
Yes, that's so much different. That's so,
It
you know,
totally, it is very different.
that's one of my favorite World War II movies, even though it's completely made up. Um,
It's very out there too in
it's
terms
very
of.
out there. I love Spike Lee movies, first of all, um, just and in general. But that movie, it deals with a lot of the same issues. That's
Yeah.
about the
Yep.
Buffalo Soldiers, the all black army unit,
Hmm.
in Italy, actually. But that is so much more. You get so much more of a realistic idea of what it was like for these men.
Yep. The
And
focus is
that's a
more
black
on that.
director.
Yep.
So maybe there is a correlation there. Actually, there's probably a strong correlation there.
I think so. I think
Yeah,
we've hit
I know.
it.
That was
We got the
staring us
bullseye on
right in
that
the
one.
face the whole time. Yeah, okay. So
um,
to answer your question, yes.
this is why representation matters, everybody.
Yes. Yes.
And storytellers and who's telling the story also matters. And maybe if and it's not necessarily that Lucas uh is the one behind the scenes and all that stuff, but maybe if he were more prone, and maybe he would have if it were coming out in 2025 or so, or someone younger than him, right, had more maybe writers in the room or voices saying like, hey, let's push on this more. Here are some pages I wrote that will delve into this further. Maybe that would have been the case, but not in 2010.
And you know what? I just remembered an interview with George Lucas that I read yesterday, and it was right before this movie came out commercially.
Hmm.
So they weren't aware how meager it would do, I guess. They were very, very excited about the movie coming out, and they were doing, I believe I'm remembering this correctly, a pre-screening for the movie,
Hmm.
and they loved it so much, and they were like, we're going to make this into a trilogy. So they were hoping that the second installment of the Red Tails trilogy was going to be directed by Spike Lee.
Ooh, well,
Yes,
that would have been great.
right. I know. So I need to look into that again. I'm going to put that down because I'm
Ultimately,
pretty
it's
sure
like,
that's how I'm remembering it.
I mean, I do believe that they had plans for sequels after this, so
Hmm.
very much possible that Spike Lee could have been involved with that. I know that Samuel L. Jackson was involved at
That's
one
right.
point
Yeah.
with maybe even taking a stab at writing this film that he declined. Because there are a lot of people in the African American community apparently that were approached to write this movie that they were like, I don't want to do that. Like they were afraid to
Yeah. It makes a
to
little
take on
more
the
sense
mantle
now,
of that.
doesn't it?
Yeah. So I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, there's so much to tackle here, and it's kind of difficult to do all that in a quick 2 hour, quick 2 hour
Right.
movie,
Yeah, exactly.
right? It's like, oh, you look at some of these epic World War II films, and they're like 3 hours for a reason, right? Because it
Hmm.
is tough to get a lot of these plot points that you need to get into, plus also tell a cohesive story along the way. So yeah, it is tough to do so. Um, but yeah, well, unfortunately, this film was not that successful.
Right.
Comes in terms of the box office. It only made about 50 million, so the budget's like 56 million, so a little bit of a loss at the box office. Maybe it made it up in terms of home media sales. I got the Blu-ray. I was there on opening night, Ashley, so
You were?
I
Wow.
absolutely was. Yep. The Coco-Plex in Hershey, Pennsylvania, with my grandfather on opening night. It was a great time.
Wow.
We
Okay.
got pizza beforehand. I remember that, and then we
Oh, good
watched Red
memory.
Tails, and then I remember getting the Blu-ray for Valentine's Day of 2013. My parents got me that instead of, because I don't like candy or chocolate or anything like that. And they used to
Hmm.
get me Valentine's gifts for fun. And I went upstairs to my room, and lo and behold, there was a Red Tails Blu-ray copy there, and I still have it to this day. Um,
Nice.
but
Blu-ray.
a Blu-ray. They haven't released a 4K yet, so talking to you, Disney, since you own the rights now, release the 4K of Red Tails. But unfortunately, it was not a massive box office success and received kind of middling reviews from critics. The critics' consensus from Rotten Tomatoes claims so this, despite a worthy fact-based story and obvious good intentions, Red Tails suffers from one-dimensional characters, corny dialogue, and heaps of cliches. So what do you think of those claims? And I think I know the answer already to that one based on our conversation here. And do you wish that the
Yes.
film were ultimately more successful? And I think I know the answer to that one too.
Yes. You're right. I wholeheartedly agree with these claims because I feel the exact same way. Um, Obviously, I wish it did better just because it's a World War II movie. I think,
Hmm.
I want all these stories to be successful, cheesy or not. There's an audience for that.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
want
sure.
more and more people to know these stories, however they get it. Um, but I do feel like obviously the dialogue and just the cliches in general. Like when he flew over Sophia's house and saw her on the roof and was like, "I love her," and I'm
I'm
like,
already in
"There's
love. I'm gonna
no
marry that woman.
yes, there's no way you could see what this person even looks like. She might be 90 years old. You're in an
That's right.
airplane."
Nor would she
Anyway,
recognize him. Like she's like, "Oh yes,
exactly.
I saw you in that cockpit
Yes,
earlier."
yes, exactly. So there's a lot of cliche happening, but really, I do feel like there were too many famous people in
hmm
this movie.
hmm
They definitely tried to tell too many stories, I think. I
Got
really
it.
like the Lightning and Easy relationship, but I think there were too many characters, too many undeveloped stories in it, and I don't know if it
Yeah.
was they just wanted to fit it all in, or if they just
hmm
wanted to fit more famous people in it. Because these people are made up, so maybe they're like, "Oh, Neo wants to be a part of this project, so let's make a character for him." I don't know,
I mean,
but
maybe Neo was like, "I need to
right,
be in this," and we'll say, "Great, we'll write a
I
character
know,
for you." And he's like, "I want to
yeah,
do this very Delta Mississippi accent in this movie." Like, all right, sure,
right,
Neo, run with it.
yeah,
Who are we
I
to tell
know.
you no?
So yeah, I think there were just too many characters, which kind of diluted the development
hmm
of all the characters. But whatever.
No, maybe with an extra half hour, like would that perhaps have made it more time with the characters, more dialogue? Maybe not more dialogue, but if the
Really, just
dialogue were better,
depends. Yeah, I know.
yeah. That's what I was
Like,
like. Oh, as I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, oh well, if the dialogue is what it is, then
yeah, it just is
maybe
what
a
it
half
is. It would
hour
have
just
just been,
overstates its welcome.
yep, it would have just been half an hour of more cheesy dialogue. I don't know.
But if it were successful, maybe we get that Spike Lee sequel of some sorts where
Yeah.
Meiji tells a different story and goes more
And
in
I
depth.
still can't
And
I can't even see that happening. I wish it would. But his
it
his movies are just so different from Lucasfilm.
it would be very different. And now, I will say, Lucas is always a fan of that dark middle chapter of films.
Yeah.
So it would be the Empire Strikes Back of World War II
Right.
films. So I don't even know what that sentence really means in practice, but
Right.
maybe Spike Lee would be the guy to pull off something like that, and with his unique
Yeah,
sense
maybe.
of dialogue and approach to things, it could have been a very interesting project. And frankly, he still could do it. Nothing stopping him from doing a Tuskegee Airmen
You're right.
project.
Especially now when sequels are being made 20 years after
Doesn't even
the
need to be a
original movies
sequel. It
came
could just
out.
be no, yeah,
Right.
no
Yeah.
one's remembering this one. You could just literally call it Tuskegee Airmen and call it a
Yeah.
day, and that would be the case. But yeah, who knows? There's a chance
Yeah.
for more down the line, separate from this. But I guess the other thing is like this film was made in some sense because um, there was a notion in Hollywood that people don't pay to see all black casts and black purpose films,
Mhm.
right? Which if this film is successful, then it counteracts that narrative, right? And that's kind of the hope, because then it leads to more African American focused stories and stories of that sense. So, but fortunately, people have fought against that, right? We've got in Selma a couple of years after this. Um, Moonlight wins a Best Picture a couple of years later as well. Black Panther is a big cultural phenomenon
Mhm.
across the board. So there definitely have been counteractions to that over the last couple of years, which I'm very glad to see that hopefully Hollywood continues in those trends. And frankly, for other ethnic groups and races too, that continues to dabble into other stories and cultures and tell them and bring them to the forefront of culture, so that we can continue to be or reflect the populace that we are at large. And frankly, for this one too, I'm glad that even though it is a little surface level and cheesy and very much of an era before it written, that it
Mhm.
exists so that either people first are introduced to the Tuskegee Airmen, right? I can imagine this being played in like a ninth grade history class to introduce
Right.
them. Maybe not the full movie, but a few sequences here and there of such, so that they can get an understanding of who these people are, and maybe it leads them to other inquiries about the Second World War or the people behind the Tuskegee Airmen and such. And frankly, it leads me to my last question for you here, Ashley. So, as a World War II historian, you've been to many historic sites, you've seen many movies over the decades about World War II. For anyone who wants to learn more, so our listeners at home who are curious about the Tuskegee Airmen, they've heard our conversation today, maybe they've watched the movie. Um, what books, documentaries, or other related media would you recommend that they go check out after listening to this episode?
Well, my first recommendation for learning more about any World War II topic is always to visit the place in question. So in this
Yes.
case, I would highly recommend a visit to Tuskegee Airmen National Historic Site in Alabama. That's not always an option for everyone, but it is by far the best way to learn about the history of these men. You get to see actual artifacts, learn about them from the source, so
Hmm.
you're probably getting pretty accurate information. Um, you get to see the planes they flew in and where they trained and stuff like that. So, regardless of what the topic is, I always say going to the place is the best way to learn about these experiences.
Yep.
So number
Yep.
number one, definitely that. Um, but another good resource is actually Lucasfilm. Um,
Do
because
tell.
alongside Red Tails, they also produced another film about Tuskegee Airmen, a documentary called Double Victory.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think it came out about the same time, if
It's
I'm
on the
not
Blu-ray. I can tell you that. So
okay,
yep.
good. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, and so it's available for free on the Lucasfilm website, and it
Hmm.
really just directs you to YouTube. But they provide a free education guide to go along with it, like either for
Awesome.
teaching in school or I just like to read it. It comes with like questions to think about while you're watching the movie. Um, and the documentary includes all archival footage. I assume dash cam footage, but I'm not
I can
like
only hope.
certain, but we'll see. So archival, video footage and photographs, and they show interviews with
Amazing.
several of the actual Tuskegee Airmen, telling their whole story. So I think it's about 90 minutes long.
Yep.
Um, so I highly recommend watching that in conjunction with Red Tails.
It's a
Either
great double feature.
before, yeah, either before or after, because it's like the real story with real footage, and then you can watch Red Tails and get like the George Lucas version. And
Yeah.
it's narrated by Cuba Gooding Jr.
Oh, a
So
great through
yeah,
line. Definitely a pure
right.
sequel to this.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and the Lucasfilm website actually has a ton of links to other resources, like tons of interviews that you can watch and biographies about these
Nice.
men. So I definitely feel like, books and other documentaries aside, like just watch that one. Like watch that, check out the interviews. That's really all you need. Um,
Absolutely.
but beyond that, and I haven't seen this movie myself, but apparently 1995, there was another movie called
Another one
Tuskegee Airmen.
with
Cuba
Lawrence
Gooding
Fishburne.
Jr.'s in
Yep.
it. Yeah. Lawrence Fishburne, Andre Brower, who I love, Malcolm Jamal Warner. Another star-studded movie, but I think it was made for TV, if I'm wrong.
An HBO movie even, so even less
Right,
people
yeah.
got to see it at that time. And
Right. But everything I read was that it's so good. And I
I haven't
watched
even seen it yet, so
yeah, I
I can't
haven't
even
seen it
confirm.
either. I watched a few clips. It does feel a little more realistic and
Hmm.
a little less comic book-ish, I guess you could say.
That's a fair way to describe it. Yeah,
Yes. So if you still wanted, like a dramatic retelling of the history, maybe check that one out too.
I
Yeah.
concur. I mean,
Yeah.
it can't hurt, right? If
Right.
you've already
Yeah. It
seen
can't hurt.
a
Yeah.
PG-13 version, right? Go check out, frankly,
Right.
everything else, and you'll get a more rounded picture of
Yeah.
what the Second World War looked like as best we can, aside from the actual documentary footage and firsthand accounts of it, because we'll never, frankly, know what it's like. We're
Right.
all just we're all just trying
Yeah.
to figure it out and contextualize it and wrap our heads around this great climactic event that was 80 years ago.
Yeah.
So I did mention World War II weekend a little bit ago, and I did go quite often, a lot back in the day. And I did pick up a book a few years ago called Black Nights there, which I have read, and it's really good. And it tells the story of the Tuskegee Airmen in like 300 pages. So I will add that to the list for people if
Cool.
you are interested. And it has a full list of all the names of everybody that was involved
Wow.
in the Tuskegee Airmen program back then, in the back. So if you actually know a person like I do, we actually had a family member, not a family member, but a friend, a close family friend, my mom's friend. Well, her dad was a member of the Tuskegee Airmen, so we very much felt like family. And
Wow. Cool.
his name is in the book, so I was like, oh, no,
Nice.
They weren't lying to me back in the day.
Right.
So people always embellish war stories and all that, and they're like, "Yep,
Yeah.
I was at Iwo Jima and D-Day. I landed on both, and I was at Pearl Harbor too." I'm like, "Okay, Grandpa, you were not."
Okay, Grandpa, time for
Yeah,
bed.
it's like let's reevaluate this tomorrow here. Maybe you weren't at all those places at the same time. But yep, always good to check out. I'm sure an Amazon search would pull up a lot of great other
Mhm.
related books too related to this, and I think as much as I've been boo-hooing on it, I think Masters of the Air is another great story about the air war in World War II, and they do have an episode and a half that talks about some of the Tuskegee Airmen. And I will say the companion podcast that the World War II Museum put on in conjunction with the Masters of the Air show does an even better job at delving into the real history and the stories that inspired all of the things that you saw on screen. So for those Tuskegee Airmen episodes, you'll get a lot more in stories and in-depth information about that as well. Um,
Especially since I don't think the Tuskegee Airmen even flew with the 100th Bomb Group.
they did
I
not.
think that was some creative license they took to add them to the
And they talk
story.
about that in the
Okay,
production
good.
in the podcast. They're like, "Yeah, we found an opportunity where we could bring them in,"
Yeah, okay.
and I'm like, "Okay." Very much my theory that you did shoehorn them into the story just
Right.
because. But apparently, the historical aspect is that they were in the same Stalag at the end.
Mhm.
So a way to bridge those stories together in some way without really fully exploring their story. I'm like, come on, they deserve a full 10 episode series
I
too,
know. Wouldn't that be awesome? Like
or at
Band
least
of
in the
Brothers, but Tuskegee
absolutely,
Airmen. I know.
or at least like maybe not just one episode where you kind of just like,
I
oh, here
know.
they are, like maybe a little bit throughout the series, like a scene
Right.
here, a scene there. Like, we're a smart audience, we can follow. But I digress. That's for a different
Right.
episode, which actually will be coming on the show because ILM Industrial Light and Magic did the effects for Masters of the Air. So we'll be talking about that in a few weeks, folks. So get ready for that. But Ashley, thank you so much for coming on to Force Ghost Conversations and chatting about 2012's Red Tails. If the folks want to find Destination World War II online or the cool things that you're doing, where can they find you if they want to continue the conversation?
Yeah, it's destination WWII.com. Um, I post pretty regularly about locations, mostly around Europe. Little bit Pacific, little bit US, but mostly around Europe. Yeah,
Come on, we got to get you out to like Peleliu and Guadalcanal,
I
Ashley,
know.
so
I'm
you can see
working on
those
it.
sites.
I'm working on it. I've been, like I've been to Okinawa and stuff, but that was before I was really researching stuff. Nope, I have trips in the works for the next couple years for the to the Pacific. I'm in
Awesome.
Boston, so that's a trek for me.
Ooh, that's a long flight.
I know.
It's a long flight.
Europe is so much closer. Um, and I'm
Really
already
is.
there a lot for other reasons, so I usually just extend my
I was gonna say
trips.
that like 5 hour
Yeah.
flight from Logan to
I know,
Heathrow.
it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. I know.
You're like halfway there, right?
I know.
Versus like, God forbid, Japan is
Yep.
19 hours at least.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. And even to get to these smaller Pacific islands, right? Like
I know.
you're
Yep.
flying to Guam, then you're taking the one flight a day to like Palau or Bedio, or you're flying to Australia and then taking a shuttle
Yep.
flight to Guadalcanal or Bougainville or anything like that, right? So just
Yes. So
all the power to
Europe
all
is
these people.
so much faster and so much easier.
So much more
Um,
accessible, I'll say.
so much more accessible. Yes. But also there's so much to see. I'm in Germany a lot. So there's an endless amount.
There is an endless amount over there.
Yes.
And it's fantastic. Your blog is fantastic, so I'll give
Thank
that plug again.
you.
As a person that used it, is a personal user right here.
Yes, thank
I
you.
can attest to the high quality and caliber of work that Ashley has produced over there, and I hope that folks, when they're planning their vacations and want to include some Second World War um, thoughtful tourism, as I like to call it, right? Because I know people are like, I'm not going to a concentration camp, and I'm like,
I know.
you survive, you get the opportunity to go, you get to be a witness. This is important. You must. You can. How can you say never again or never forget if you aren't willing to go yourself to see these places and be a firsthand witness to them? How can you combat a denier if you aren't actually there on and walked around yourself and saw the things that have been where these atrocities took place, right? Um,
Yep, this is a battle I have with people every single day, just trying to convince them to visit concentration camps.
like it is very important and it's pivotal that you do so as a human being so you learn the signs, learn the lessons, know the ultimate outcome of these traumatic horrific events, right?
Mhm.
Again, sometimes it's an uphill battle, but got to keep fighting the good fight, and you are fighting the good fight, Ashley,
Thank you.
as you're telling these stories and keeping the stories of the greatest generation alive.